Hi everyone, it's Lisa with InkandInspirations.com. We're going to be making a fun fold card with the Sweet Strawberry bundle from the mini catalog. And it is on page 44 and it comes with a great stamp set and a punch. And I'll be using that, the bundle, as well as the designer paper that's part of a bundle as a celebration freebie with a $100 order. It's on page 14 and all of these items have copyrighted images from Stampin' Up. So I'm starting with Poppy Parade 10 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4 by 8.5. And I'm going to give those folds or creases a good burnish with my bone folder. So I have two of those pieces of the paper, very delightful, from that freebie, and that's 1 1/4 by 5 1/4 and 4 by 5 1/4. And I'm going to use those with some liquid glue to glue on top of the front of the card base. Now this fun fold is just an easy closure, and the scoring is what makes it different. It's not really that much bigger than a regular size card, but the fold makes it fun and will have a different type of closure. So now that I have these glued on the front, we'll start looking at these labels here, one in Granny Apple Green and one in Basic White. And I use these labels from the Hippo and Friends die set from the annual catalog. So I'm going to be doing some stamping on that Basic White label. So I'm going to get some Memento Black ink and the Strawberry Blossom stamp, ink that up, and I'm going to stamp off so it's not so dark, and just do it right there on the side of my grid sheet, and then stamp it onto that white label. Now we're using Memento Black because we're going to be coloring with our Stampin' Blends, which are alcohol markers, and we're using Granny Apple Green combo and Daffodil Delight combo. And I'm just using the light Daffodil Delight to color in the centers of those blossoms. Then I'm going to start with the light Granny Apple Green and fill in those leaves. And then I'll go over it with the dark Granny Apple Green. Now again, the Memento Black is such that when you color with these alcohol markers, it doesn't bleed. So that's why you always want to use this particular ink when you're coloring with our alcohol markers. Now I'm just going over some of the veins in the leaves and the stems with the dark Granny Apple Green. And it's just easy coloring. And so I'll put that aside. And now I'm going to take and layer those labels using some liquid glue. And that's going to be the focal image on the front of the card. So now I'm going to take the detailed trio punch and punch a little hole on the side of the label because I'm going to thread ribbon through that for the closure. Now that's a curved edge, so I'm trying to get that even and see where I'm going to punch that. And so I'm going to set that down, slide that in, and give it a punch. And you can see I have a little slot there that ribbon can slide through. Now I'm going to get a piece of Granny Apple Green scrap. It's about a 1 1/4 inch wide. I just roughly cut that. And I'm going to take the stem and the topper for the strawberry, and I'm going to color it with my garden green marker. You can also use a garden green ink pad, and I'm going to color it and stamp it twice. And since it's sideways on the punch, I want to stamp it that way on the paper so that when I slide that punch in, it's going to be easy to line it up. So you want to separate your images a bit when you're cutting more than one of the same ones so that you don't overlap when you're punching. So see, I could just slide that right in and punch both of those and have those two ready to go on top of the strawberries. So now I'm going to separate those, move my scraps out of the way, and then I'll get a piece of the Poppy Parade. For this particular stamp, I have the outline for the strawberry stamp instead of the solid image since I'm stamping on cardstock. And so I'm using that punch, and so I'm going to stamp that strawberry upside down because that's the orientation that you see when I use that punch. So I'm coloring over the top of this with my Cherry Cobbler Stampin' Right marker. These are water-based, so you can use them on your stamps, or you can use a Cherry Cobbler ink pad. And I'm just going to stamp those two, and you can see that I'll slide them in to the punch and give it a punch, and those will be ready to go. Now those were a little close together, and I have a little nick cut out of one of the strawberries, but that'll be okay. It almost makes it look more realistic, and it's going to be covered up by the other strawberry. So now I have my label ready to go, and I'm deciding on the positioning there. And so I'm just going to put them down with liquid glue, and I'm going to put one on top of the other, just like that. So now we almost have this focal point ready for the front of the card. That's going to be part of the card closure. And so let me put these toppers on with some more liquid glue, and then it's going to be ready to go. Okay, so that's going to go there. It's going to overlap on that shorter or the more narrow flap. And so I'm going to put some Stampin' Seal here on this side that's going to adhere to that flap. But before you do that, it's always best to go ahead and wrap your ribbon around. And so I'm using the crinkled seam binding ribbon in Whisper White from the annual catalog. And I'm wrapping it around the card as if it's closed and snipping off enough where I can tie a bow. So now I have that adhesive there, so I'm going to overlap that ribbon just on that front over flap, and then I can thread this end of the ribbon through that little hole that was punched, and then the bow can be tied when you're ready to send it. Now I need a sentiment, so I've got a piece of basic white scrap and the Hello There sentiment from the stamp set, using some, I used the Memento Black, but then I changed my mind, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp it in the garden green. So I'm using that garden green marker again, and I'm going to stamp on that scrap piece of basic white. And then I'm going to take my paper snips and just fussy cut that sentiment out. And I'm kind of doing curved edges around that script font on the top with the hello there. And there's not really a right or wrong way to do that, but just when it's in that script, I like to go around the curves. Now I'm going to use some mini dimensionals to pop that up on the front there by the blossom. Okay. So now I have some of these opal rounds. They are also in the mini catalog January to June 2021. And I'm just going to scatter 3 of those in that opal white on that label. So now for the inside of the card, I have a piece of basic white 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm going to stamp the blossom again in the Memento Black ink, one in the upper left corner and one in the lower right corner. And then I can see, oop, I messed up, so I'm going to turn it over and redo it. That's what the back side is for, right? So let me stamp that again and be a little bit more careful with my inky hands and block. So let's get our Stampin' Blends again and color just the center of those flowers, and then I'll color the leaves with a Granny Apple Green marker, just like I did on the front label. And this is super quick, super easy coloring. And then I'm going over it, doing some of the veins and the stems in the dark Granny Apple Green. This just ties in the front of the card with the inside of the card. And I'm going to leave this one without a sentiment so that when I send it, I can decide if I want it to be a thank you card or a birthday card and use the appropriate sentiment on the inside. So you see, this is how you wrap it around, tie the bow, and it's going to fit in one of our medium standard size envelopes. So once you get your bow tied, you can trim those edges as you like, adjust the bow, and then it'll be ready to go. Okay, I hope you will give that a try. This sweet strawberry bundle is great, and it's wonderful that it coordinates with one of our celebration choices. If you have any questions, let me know. Visit my website at inkandinspirations.com, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.